Prompted by the passing of my 92-year-old grandmother, I recently sat down with my pa, a man of equal mileage, to get his stories. Playing through Gran Turismo 7, an earnest love letter to the motor car, felt like a similar process. Boot this game and you're effectively pulling up your bucket racing seat next to series creator Kazunori Yamauchi to listen to his explanation of a golden era he lived and breathed. One which, sadly, is now shrinking in our rearview mirrors. Driving is awesome, but it's fading out of existence, and the reasons why are many. Cars are expensive, fossil fuels are bad, work from home might kill commuting altogether. Modern cars all look like electric shavers now, instead of the sex magnets they used to be. Hell, nobody even designs them with bubble domes, tail fins, or shag carpeting anymore. Basically, the next generation of kids wants to buy the latest phone, not get their learner's permit and a fully sick family sedan that goes shh every gear change. The good news? GT7 delights with its usual arresting change of gen visuals, but there's also a compelling sweetness in Cars' motor musings. This sequel has the beating heart under its hood that 2017's Gran Turismo Sport lacked. It's as much an impressive graphical powerhouse as it is an intimately personal hoon down memory lane. To paraphrase, Polyphony's adjusted goals are these: entice and enthrall newcomers with a down-to-earth, downright educational campaign drawn from the best GTs of yore. Also, keep the hardcore happy by keeping GT Sports' esports ecosystem in, though kind of off to the shoulder. Lastly, extreme tune and elevate everything with the PS5's coolest hardware upgrades. We're going to dive into what that means in a second, but first of all, here's a chunk of non-commentary gameplay that can be skipped via the play bar. I always try to include a bunch of these in my reviews. Let's talk in a bit. Let's look at the solo component first, as it's clearly the mode which has evolved the most. With GT Sport, the campaign offering, that was eventually patched in, was an uninspired menu farm of 48 driving school tasks, 56 mission challenges, circuit experiences, and a GT League. The latter bolted in 300 odd races, but it was slapdash and incredibly tight-assed about handing out any gift cards whatsoever. In short, she was a poor substitute for a campaign. In stark contrast to the cold, clinical nature of all that, GT7 almost goes overboard in its attempt to show a bit of old-school soul. You'll start out with a shitbox car. Your main menu is a Lilliputian car village. In-game messages are cheerful howdy-do texts from anonymous townsfolk like Sarah, Andy, or this guy. The most important denizen is Luca, a car nut restaurateur who divvies out menu tasks. You can only have one of these, 39 total menus, going at any one time, and old mate always picks the topic. Typically, he wants you to collect 3 specific autos by any means necessary. If you somehow already own one of them, great, If not, a World Circuit menu of races will handily mark the events, which will gift the rides you seek, providing you achieve a podium finish. It's all simple to grasp, soaked with smooth jazz, is disarmingly quaint, and surprisingly addictive. You can of course break away and do whatever you wish, but your sandbox options are going to be limited until you smash out some menus to unlock a full serving of 34 tracks, 48 mission challenges, and 3 local car dealerships that have rotating daily stock, my favourite of which is the used cars section. There's always a bargain. As a side bonus and a means to educate curious newbies, Luca and his regulars will explain the historical significance of the 420 odd rides you'll be collecting. Some of these appraisals come with near pornographic glamour shots of your autos. Many more others are optional bits of side info that I found myself actually wanting to seek out. Oh, it's also worth mentioning that progression has changed a little since GT Sport. Driver level and earning XP for doing stuff has been turfed for this sort of singular car collector status. Those mission challenges are going to be padlocked off, and only the acquisition of cars, bought or gifted, will let you access these drag races, drift and cone challenges, and more. After doing many side-by-side comparisons with GT Sport, it feels like not much has changed in terms of handling. You still can't really hustle cars through corners like you might in something like Assetto Corsa. GT7 also continues to be a smidge more unforgiving than Forza Motorsport 7. As before, road cars retain that lovely pronounced weight transfer which demands sensible braking and gentle steering input. Pure race beasts feel every bit engineered to hug the track until you get too radical, break traction, and then you're going to wind up in traction. That being said, I believe the AI has been tuned some. You can spot little wiggles or overcorrections as they accelerate too hard out of a corner. But other than that, they are still kind of slaves to the optimal line. Mind you, they're much more polite this time around. In GT Sport, trying to brake late and force a dickish inside line overtake would get you shunted. In GT7, the same aggressive maneuver will always be spotted by the AI, even if you're lurking in their blind spot, and there'll be this obsequious little brake to give you right of way, even when you really don't deserve it. In theory, I appreciate the simulated sportsmanship, no doubt a move by Polyphony to set a good example for potential esport recruits, but it's pretty exploitable by scumbags like yours truly. I was also genuinely surprised by what constitutes a clean race, which earns you a plus 50% prize money bonus. I made extra bank after some pretty heinous driving. While we're mulling the topic of challenge, I should mention that I approached this campaign like I did back in the 1990s, as a teenager with very little understanding of tuning. PP, the problematic acronym for performance points, starts as a loose recommendation, and it takes a while to become a hard ceiling limit for fairness. In many cases, victory was simply about taking the gift car given, slapping the absolute biggest turbo or supercharger in it, slipping into some soft tyres, and no further tuning. Providing I could control the red line rodeo that followed, I'd just power slide into a podium result. So yeah, I guess it's a slightly cushier campaign that's designed to be welcoming and offer a reasonable amount of challenge across, 12 or so hours. Don't stress, however, wannabe Stig. If you're looking to test your mettle, then you only need to look into a slew of 40 or so tougher events that exist outside of the menu adventure. There's also 3 additional international license tests to take on. Also, and obviously, you can always race against people who are more your speed in online multi, 2-player split, or that uber sweaty sport mode, which I'm told is basically the same as before. I couldn't actually verify this with pre-launch servers being offline. it comes to eye candy, Polyphony Digital can always be counted on for something sugary to rot your retinas. GT Sport looked a treat in 2017 and still holds up quite well if you're running it on PS5 in 4K at 60 frames per second. GT7, however, kicks everything up a gear in terms of detail, lighting, and gorgeous replay modes that are no longer sullied by large black bars, which is my pet hate from GT Sport. The very first thing that caught my eye was how shiny everything is, freshly washed cars especially. Honestly, in the right conditions, you could use your bodywork glare as a flashbang tactic in any bumper-to-bumper battle. Sort of like how Scottish warriors used to swap out their kilts for full-length ball gowns covered in sequins to blind their opponents. Exact same principle. Mind you, you'd have to be a strategic genius, or very lucky, to weaponize GT7's in-game sun, because now it's all over the sky, dynamic and real-time. Gone is the pre-baked lighting and fixed weathers of GT Sport. Gran Turismo is now in line with its closest console competitor, 2017's Forza Motorsport 7. And look, what we're talking about here is been there done that tech, which feels weird to rave about in 2022. That said, it all looks phenomenal and works as it should physics-wise. If you somehow only play Gran Turismo and no other racing game, you're in for some magical, script-flipping moments. A few that stuck with me: racing Mount Panorama and going from cocky frontrunner to absolutely shit-scared when the sun set behind the hill and plunged Conrod straight into lethal darkness. Likewise, I had one or two important races devolve from being a sure thing to a white-knuckle fight for survival. Because sports tyres plus a flash rainstorm plus hairpins equals your first-class ticket for the aquaplane. Serious simmers have enjoyed all of the aforementioned for years, but it's hard not to geek out when you finally get to see that modern tech occur on classic tracks like Deep Forest, High Speed Ring and Trial Mountain. Even if the joy of the latter track is muted somewhat by the iffy reimagining of its last corner. I'll leave you to discover that yourself. Oh, and speaking of disappointments related to legacy content, the various off-road courses look great too, but that joy is stalled by those weird rally physics. They are still so bizarre. It wasn't uncommon for me to fly off a jump and be treated to a glimpse of the non-world underneath the track. And I know what's coming. Ever since dirt racing appeared in Gran Turismo 2, people have rallied to its defense with, "Oh, go easy on the obvious side mode. Polyphony isn't Codemasters and this ain't dirt." I'll give you that. But I still think 23 years is more than enough time to punch these physics into way better shape. It's an unnecessary blight on visual presentation that's otherwise nigh indistinguishable from a telecast. Take a look at it now, it's beautiful. It irritates me to say this, but the most mind-blowing features of GT7 are things that I can't really show you or explain easily. They're touch and sound-based additions that leverage two of the PlayStation 5's coolest bits of hardware, the DualSense controller and Pulse 3D headset. Let me explain it in a direct GT Sport and GT7 comparative, driving the exact same car, a Dodge Tomahawk, on the exact same track, Northern Isle Speedway. In layman's terms, this is the act of driving a brake horsepower behemoth around an incredibly tight speed bowl. With a DualSense, the feedback coming through my hands as I undertake that task is akin to listening to a symphony of touch. Tons of different notes piping up here and there, all of them from instruments I can recognise. On the force feedback triggers, I feel skittering R2 trigger tightenings as I push the limits of tyre grip and common sense. Likewise, my brakes on L2 constrict and relax under the strain of shifting weight and the odd unintended drift moment. Lateral nicks and pushes occur when I trade paint with competitors or lean on a barrier. Lastly, deep in the core of the controller, I'm treated to mechanical ka-chunks of gear changes and bursts of blue flame backfirings coming out of my exhaust. Comparing the exact same experience on a DualShock 4 is like night and day. I'm getting one blaring vibration that has all the subtlety of a white noise machine. It's no longer a fascinating conversation between man and machine. I'm simply being shrieked at through my hands. That's the level of difference. Being serenaded by an opera in an auditorium versus some lost drunk yelling at you through your apartment intercom. Ever since launch, I've yearned to see what a first-party developer with R&D level knowledge could achieve with a DualSense. That wait was worth it. Obviously, I prefer a traditional wheel, though it's a pretty close race. I remember scoffing when cars suggested that, quote, the DualSense can allow the user to control the car on the same level as a steering wheel controller. I'll be damned if he isn't right. There's absolutely a heightened sense of precision here. And if all that sounds good, wait until you hear the audio. For starters, of course you're getting all of the expected delights. Cars which have been painstakingly recorded while going flat knackers on a dyno, and their audio footprints evolve in subtle ways as you switch out parts. But you're also getting these cool little flourishes that are there just for the car nuts, like the crackling tinks of your engine equilibrating to cooler air after a race. Slip on a Pulse 3D headset and all of a sudden you've got daredevil levels of hearing with Tempest 3D tech that equates to having a 16-channel audio system strapped to your melon. I found myself marveling at subtle surface changes occurring very much beneath my car. Meanwhile, I could blindly track heavenward things like rain pinging off my roof, helicopters, or getting buzzed by a squadron of jets. Laterally, the sounds projected by your beast will also realistically reverberate off trackside barriers back toward you. It is pure oral sex. So where does Gran Turismo 7 end up when the checkered flag drops? Well, I can confidently say that it overtakes GT Sport, providing polyphony keeps its promises, and all of that eSport functionality returns from the last game. In terms of single-player offerings and recapturing the spirit of classic GTs, well, this new model blows the doors, boot and bonnet off the old girl. You're getting a ton of meaningful content and an actual reason to push through said content. Plus, you're getting the usual visual upgrade that puts the current Gran Turismo at the absolute cutting edge of whatever your particular PlayStation can handle. Does this flagship PlayStation racer still have a ways to go in its fight against Forza Motorsport? Yes, in some areas. Polyphony continues to lag on AI and raw car numbers. For those of you keeping score at home, Forza Motorsport had 700 in its stable. Those two things are important facets that really should have been prioritized over stuff nobody asked for, like music rally modes and more soundtrack-friendly replays. At best, they're nice to haves. All that being said, for the first time in a long time, we have some true, game-changing points of difference on this side of the fence. Through the PlayStation 5 hardware, GT7 is doing things with touch and sound on a level that no other console racer, or a PC without an insanely pricey sim rig, can hope to emulate. Basically, Gran Turismo 7 is a triple threat. It's one of the best sounding, most luscious looking, and phenomenal feeling races I've ever played in my life. And I've strapped in to all of the ones that matter. Short of full VR integration, Polyphony couldn't have hoped for a better celebration of 25 years worth of automotive excellence.